Let's go over the day's top stories with Sky News contributor Gary Hardgrave. Gary, let's start with the Miles government in Queensland. Stephen Giggles Miles and Labor are emphatic. They're denying they sought advice on whether they should cancel the 2032 Brisbane Olympic Games. Media reports suggest that they privately raised the question after there was that great public backlash over the cost of the project, but a spokeswoman from the Miles office has said the government has never sought advice about cancelling the Games. We've always said Queensland would deliver a great Games. Not once did the government ever have an intention to cancel the Games. Well, there you go. Are you buying this explanation, Gary?
I'm not sure many Queenslanders are, Rita. Great to be with you. I think a lot of us in Queensland actually want them to get on with it. You see, 1 July next year is the end of the early mark. Brisbane was announced over 1,000 days ago as the host for 2032, and nothing's been done. There's no plan. There was this fight over the Gabba and ruining a heritage-listed school and updating other buildings in the central city. But a lot of us who live in Brisbane want to know how we get around the city. And the plan was always about sort of 2045, where the infrastructure we're going to need as a growing Brisbane becomes 8 million people in the great southeast corner over the next 20 or so years. How were we going to manage that growth? The Olympics was going to be the vehicle. There's nothing. There's just absolutely no announcements, no plan, nothing concrete, pardon the pun, of any description about infrastructure. So a lot of us are planning where we're going to be during 2032. We're going to get the heck out of town. And of course now Stephen Miles has said, I've got this great idea. John Coates told me, just use existing infrastructure. So he's gone to a stadium which was built 46 years ago, which is the old QE2 stadium. Rita, when I was in high school, I went to the opening day when Her Majesty drove around on the car. One of my, I was one of the local high school students. We went up there to wave to Her Majesty as she drove around to open up the QE2 stadium, which is now apparently, that was 1977, now apparently going to be the venue for the 2032 Olympics. I mean, you just can't make this stuff up. But I actually think the Miles government is making the stuff up, if you get what I mean. There's no doubt in my mind they have lost all interest,
get what you mean.
all direction, all ideas. Yeah.
Well, I think maybe they're counting that they don't have to worry about this because we've got a state election coming in October, and I think perhaps this will become someone else's problem.
Well, these things can become career ruiners. And the problem for David Crisafulli, if he was to win the election, is building anything in Queensland relies on a deal with the CFMEU. And the price of everything has just gone up, in some cases doubled. Not just the cost of labour, but the cost of material. The cost of building projects has gone out twice the length. And so private sector people are now borrowing more money to build less in a slower way, and it's becoming uneconomical to build anything here. Heaven help us when they say, if you want it built, this is the deal. We've got a real problem ahead of us, and unless we sort out the CFMEU and its impact on building and the future of Queensland, I don't know how these games are actually going to be built.
Well, we've got similar issues right here in Victoria, and we learned today that the Victorian government perhaps fudged their figures for the 2026 Commonwealth Games when they tried to explain their way out of hosting it. They quoted almost $7 billion, where the state's auditor has found it was actually $4.9 billion. What's a few billion between friends? The auditor said the government's figures were overstated. I'm shocked that Dan Andrews is bad with numbers. Who could have imagined that?